What is going on? So I thought I would update you guys with where I'm at with my training, or where my training is not at, as the case may be. This past week for me has been a deload week. Now, deloads are a really important time that we can basically create adaptation within our training. Now, some of the ways that you may suspect that you need a deload are lack of excitement to train, or you may find that you're having to rely excessively on stimulants to get you into that place where you want to train, or get you switched on sort of neurologically, or fire up that central nervous system. So for me, I was down to 2 strength sessions a week because I felt like that was all I could buffer. I was busy with work, and I was also not in a zone where I wanted to train, and now that is not like me. I felt that I was having to not make excuses, but I was not in that place where I wanted to train, and that is a big sign for me that I should step back. Now, I couldn't actually remember the last time that I didn't train in a week. I think it was probably last time I spent a long time on a flight or traveling. So that said to me, right, you need a week off, a break. Now, this week has been awesome for me in the sense that I've actually refocused and looked at doing other things. So getting out for walks, being out in the sun, getting a little bit of like cold exposure, but nothing mental. I actually spent a lot this week in my own head, or trying to deal with a lot of thoughts. Now, not to say there's any negative thoughts, but just basically, rather than going out and training, like working out, I've been working in, which has been very beneficial for me. So what we need to remember is that rest is not the opposite of training. Rest is an ally of training. We need both. And you may have heard the term that we need to recover as hard as we train. So whether you look to do the same amount of training days as non-training days, so maybe 2 days on, 2 days off, or 1 day on, 1 day off. Some people are really fortunate, depending on how young they are or their physiological training age. They may be able to buffer more and then go longer without rest. Now, that is for you to work out. So signs that you may need to take a deload are appetite. If you're usually quite hungry, but you're finding that your appetite is not there, that could be a signal. Sleep is negatively impacted because basically your body is telling you, we're so stressed out that even sleep to us at the minute is a bit of a threat, a bit of a no-go. So that's another thing. 3, as I mentioned, for me, just the desire to train wasn't really there. So focusing on more restorative practices, basically using that time allocation that I would potentially do a training session and just working through some self-myofascial release, things that I've neglected, a little bit of yoga in there as well. Now, obviously yoga is just a movement, and it just gave me space or peace of mind that I was doing a little bit of something, but it wasn't really demanding. Like, obviously there's a spectrum with everything. You can do a really demanding yoga session or even myofascial release, but for me it was more about restoration and more restorative practices. Get this meat suit back on track. So I am intending on getting back into training next week, and I'm actually enthused about that. So taking a little bit of time off has got me into a phase where I'm thinking, boom, yes, it's time to train again. So that's exciting. Hopefully some of these thoughts that I've been through have helped you in some way. Now, if you feel that you can't give up training for a few days or even a week or a little bit longer, then I would challenge you and your beliefs around training. We need to remember that we can only push our bodies so far, and maybe there's some work to be done, whether it's like almost a psychological dependency that we are having to train because we are potentially addicted to that training. You won't lose size, you won't lose muscle mass within 1 week. It's not a long enough time for your body to start cannibalizing that muscle that you've worked so hard to gain. Maybe you have a deadline, maybe you have something that you are specifically training for, and that's why we must plan in general, so that we can put phases of detraining or deload into that overall, from the microcycle to the macrocycle. And again, I've been potentially guilty of not allowing myself enough time to train, enough time to rest. Sorry, not train. I have been training. So hopefully that's been beneficial to you. If you would like to see any more in this sort of mini series where I can break down concepts in just a few minutes, I would love to know your comments, or maybe you've struggled with something like this before in the past. Anyway, have a great weekend.